Hey everybody, welcome to Commercial Construction Elevate the Industry podcast series hosted by yours truly, Dave Cressida. Thanks first and foremost for joining us. You know, part of the podcast is dedicated to introducing you to people who have made a difference in our industry. Industry leaders. Today is no exception. Now, I got to apologize because this gentleman has received so many awards. Let me read a couple. In 2021, he was named one of the Baltimore Business Journal's Power 10 CEOs. 2020, inducted into the Baltimore Sun Business and Civic Hall of Fame. 2019, Best of Real Estate. He received the influential Marylanders Award from the Daily Record in 2019, and in 2017, also from the Daily Record. He was one of the most admired CEOs. Now, that's a hell of a resume. On a personal note, I've known this gentleman for over 20 years, and I know him as a devoted father and husband, and in spite of all his success, he remains today one of the most well-respected and grounded people that I know. So I am super excited to introduce to you today a good friend and a hell of a businessman. He's the CEO and chairman of Greenberg, Gibbons Commercial, a Maryland-based real estate firm. Mr. Brian Gibbons. Brian, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you for having me.
It's awesome to see you again. It's been a long time.
It has been a long time. Great to see you too.
So, to backdrop this whole thing, we want to talk about your business model. Then we're going to talk about you. But your business model, can you explain to the listeners, who is Greenberg Gibbons today?
You know, we are a company that's evolved quite a bit over the years. Greenberg Gibbons was founded in 1968 by my former partner, Erwin Greenberg. And he started it as a company to kind of redevelop old townhouses in Baltimore and sell it. And then over a period of time, he was focused on secondary markets and building small shopping centers like in Cambridge and Salisbury on the Eastern Shore. I met Erwin in 1996 when I was a lawyer, working on a transaction, a joint venture partnership. And I started as the president in 1999. We became a regional development firm. When we did it, we kind of came up with a business plan at the time and decided we're going to go for bigger projects, not smaller ones. We're going to go for primary markets, not secondary. And so we went on to build some major regional mixed-use projects throughout the state of Maryland, including Annapolis Town Center, Hunt Valley Town Center, Foundry Row, and many others. And today, we're becoming more of a diversified. We're calling it Greenberg Gibbons 3.0. So Erwin was 1.0, us becoming this regional developer is 2.0, and 3.0, we're really going to try to become more super regional. And so we have a lot of different business elements. We still have our traditional mixed-use town center development component. We've also started a flex industrial division where we have projects under construction in the southeast, and we intend to build 1 million square feet of projects a year for the next 8 to 10 years. And we've recently formed a private equity fund to do acquisitions of shopping centers that we thought there was going to be a lot of opportunity throughout the East Coast to buy existing shopping centers at below replacement costs, which we are. But actually, retail has recovered really significantly, much more significantly than we thought, quicker than we thought from the pandemic. But we're still having success with it. We've also started a multifamily division led by David Brookout, who was an executive at Avalon Bay Communities. David started with us in the fall of 21, and we have lots of projects that we're looking at on the books.
You know, that's amazing. And to all your listeners, this doesn't happen overnight, right? But before we get to how you got started, you said you were a lawyer.
Yes.
And I know Erwin was one of your clients. We're going to talk about that in detail, but let's start off by, you said you're a retail-led mixed-use real estate acquisition, like retail-led is one,
Right.
Real estate acquisition is 2, and developer is 3. So let's start with the retail-led. You said it a minute ago, you said that retail has rebounded, but you bet heavily, and so have your investors and partners, in the brick and mortar retail business.
Yes.
Even though e-commerce business and online sales have, from a layman's point of view, has taken off, right? Why did you do that? And obviously it's working.
Right. A lot of it was before e-commerce when we started it, Dave. But if you look at our projects, when I say retail led, because I always feel in a mixed use project, retail is what sets the tone. It's what gives a project a heartbeat. You don't go and say, "Gee, that's a really exciting looking apartment building."
Right.
And you're on the street. Retail is what's on the street and really gives you the flavor of the project. So we always feel in these mixed use projects that you've got to lead with quality retail. We always look for we also look for recession-proof type uses, and so we always look for what we feel is the highest caliber grocery store that we can get in any particular project. We're sitting here today in Annapolis Town Center that we developed, and we landed Whole Foods as our anchor here. Hunt Valley Town Center, we have Wegmans, and Foundry Row, we have Wegmans, and so on. So we've always felt that we want to have that daily trip type of retail environment, and then the mix of uses that make it a work-live-play environment that we think has been a successful strategy from the beginning. And it's becoming more and more, you see more and more of it.
So it's almost like a community-based approach, right? You want to. It's not just your anchor tenant. It's everything. It's the whole environment that you're trying to build. Like, is that what you did here in
Yes,
Annapolis?
absolutely. We have apartments, we have condos, we have office, including our own office. In addition to the retail, lots of restaurants. And so it really just creates the vibe. And it's. I'm here because I can walk down, I go to Whole Foods, I go to True Food Kitchen, I can go to Gordon Biersch, on any given day. And if I need to bring something home, I can go to Whole Foods and pick it up. And it just creates the environment that I think people love to live in this environment and work in this type of environment.
So obviously it works, and it's almost like a destination resort for some anyway. And if you live here, you can get everything you want without getting in your car, right?
Right.
And so before we get to the acquisition part, COVID, you mentioned COVID, the pandemic. From my perspective, it would have depressed the value of several properties that you might buy, but you said it recovered faster. How has COVID impacted your business?
Well, in March of 2020, obviously it was shut down. So we were shut down for several, it was 6 weeks that we were basically, the shopping centers were closed, other than necessity, like grocery stores. And obviously liquor stores were a necessity too, because those stayed open too. So we had to continue to run our projects, but a lot of our tenants were not open. So we went from 100% collections in March from our tenants to 50% collections across our portfolio in April. But that slowly climbed back up, so we were back at a 90% collection at the end of 2020. So it certainly had an immediate negative impact, and certain industries were more impacted than others. Certainly grocery stores were impacted positively. Restaurants, fitness, movie theaters. So what we've always tried to do is make our projects social and entertainment, not just shopping. And so those aspects were hurt in the short run. They've all relatively, I think the last one to recover is the movie theaters.
Yeah.
Our restaurants have certainly recovered. Our fitness has recovered. The movie theater is recovering, I would say. But the other thing that happened during the pandemic is that I think the ones that are going to be impacted the most were indoors, indoor malls, and ours are almost all outdoor open air shopping centers, so they weren't impacted the same way the indoor malls were. We do have one small indoor mall called the Shops at Kelmore in Towson that did get more impacted, but that's now recovered. The other thing that happened is that pre-pandemic, there were a lot of tenants that were teetering. There was a lot of uncertainty. And I think the primary tenants that were teetering is what we would call soft goods, clothes, really the least internet resistant uses. And what happened during the pandemic, they all went away. They went through bankruptcy and got healthier through bankruptcy. And so what has come out now is that I think retail today is significantly healthier than it was before the pandemic. Because I think the weak tenants went away, new tenants have come in to replace them that are not necessarily these vulnerable to the internet.
That is a really interesting view. So, as a business owner and partners in all these developments, you hit the brakes a bit, things slow down. What about your ability that you talk about acquisition, right? You're an real estate acquisition firm. How did that go? Did that speed up and cause?
Well, that's what we did. We raised we raised I think 125 million in private equity to do acquisitions, and we have bought 5 shopping centers from Providence, Rhode Island to Orlando, Florida, and everywhere in between. And so we have, the reason why we did that, we just thought there would be so much opportunity. But what has happened is that all the other categories of real estate, the yields are not good. Industrial, multifamily, those two in particular have been so high that all the capital chased it, which drove the yields down. Now the capital has come back to retail. And we thought it would happen, but we thought it would take 3 or 4 years.
Right.
It took less than a year for that to happen.
So you looked at the pandemic, and again, it's just how do you see it? You saw the initial issues you talked about, but you also saw opportunity, and you seized on it.
Yes.
Changed your business a bit.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And the other thing that we did was, we kind of hunkered down for 4 to 6 months. But while we hunkered down, we said, okay, what are we going to do coming out of this? And that's why we said we're going to do the private equity fund. So we closed that in February of 21. We added a multifamily division that we did in the fall of 20. What is today? 22. The fall of 21. And so we actually have positioned ourselves, and we also founded the Flex division, Flex Industrial division in January of 21. So we actually came out and reinvented this 3.0 Greenberg Gibbons with all these diverse type of avenues that we can pursue.
So I think that's brilliant. And what I think the message here is, I don't care what business you're in or whatever, don't be afraid to evolve, right? And if you're looking ahead, and again, depending on your attitude, if you see things as opportunity based, that you're gonna find things that others are just not going to see. You've done that, and that's fantastic. Talk about development now. That's the third piece of the description for you. Explain your development piece.
Yeah, I mean, that is who we are. I mean, that's really what Greenberg Gibbons has been for 20 years as a development company. And so it's interesting. I think it's hard to develop right now because the costs have risen significantly. Rents are going up, but not at the same pace as costs. And so unless you have a mixed use project, I don't see any major pure retail type developments happening for years. And we've done that historically. Our last project that was more just almost pure retail was Foundry Row, 400,000 square feet of retail. I don't see us doing that for the next 3 or 4 years because we can buy the retail for a lot cheaper than we can build it. And until rents, and I think that's going to drive rents. And until rents get up to the point to justify new development, that's kind of where we're going to be. Now, if it's part of a mixed-use project where it's a grocery store and you have office, and you have other retail, and you sell off land to a townhome developer, and you do multifamily, that type of development I think is still available, and that's kind of what we're focused on right now.
So it's kind of spreading out the risk a little bit, right?
Yes.
Different venues. That is, like I said, I used the word brilliant before, and I mean that. We're going to take a short break, and when we get back, we're going to dig into who Brian Gibbons is on a personal level. So we'll see you in a minute. Hey everybody, I'm Dave Presida, president of Adequate Construction Services LLC, and I would love to talk to you business owners about your business. I bet you most of you that are listening have at least 75% of your personal equity tied up in the business. If you care about options on how to get that money out, that's what I want to talk to you about, because I've been through it. I was a business owner and I sold my business. Didn't even know there was a buyer, but there are plenty of them. There has never been a better time than now to sell your business. So maybe you haven't even thought about it. The last deal I did, the guy, I talked to him, I said, "Do you ever consider selling your business?" He goes, "Didn't know I could." Well, yes, you can. There's a lot of options. I would urge you to go to my website, adicorp.com, adicorp.com, my last name spelled backwards, and go to Season 1 Podcast, Episode 2, Sales and Acquisitions. It's going to answer a lot of questions you might have. Yes, we talk about how you value your company, but that's only one piece, right? We're talking about why you would sell, who would buy it, common concerns about you, your staff, your clients, your legacy, all important things to discuss. So go and listen to that podcast and then contact me. Either call me or leave a message on my contact page on the website and I will get back to you, because as I said when I started, I look forward to talking to you about your business between now and then. Stay safe and stay tuned. And welcome back to Commercial Construction Elevating the Industry Podcast. We're here with Brian Gibbons. Brian, you have a really interesting story of your business, but it doesn't start with business, it starts with you. Okay, so you met Erwin Greenberg, you mentioned back in mid-90s?
Yeah, 96.
96, and he was a client, you were an attorney.
Yes.
Okay, and I remember jogging with you on the trails, and you were a former neighbor, and we were talking about the fact that, as I remember, you said that I got a client that wants me to go in business with him. And it was an easy decision for you, right? You can always be an attorney, but that was an opportunity that came. Talk about that.
It's interesting, Dave, because if it were like a big company that was asking me to come in-house, like at that time, the Rouse company or something like that, I don't think I would have been interested in doing it. But it was a small entrepreneurial shop and a lot of senior executives that were clearly capable and competent. And as I thought through with my father, I did talk to my father about it, and he says, "Are you sure you want to do this?" And at that time, David, as you may recall, I had 5 children, and Martha, my wife, was pregnant with number 6 when I was making this decision. So my dad was like, "Well, you have a great law practice and things are going well." And I said, "Look, Dad, if I'm going to try to do this, and I think it's my nature to do this, I'm 38, I got to do it now." And I said, my feeling is that, he came from a big company. He was the CP Telephone, big company. And like a lot of people would view that as job security. If you're with this big company, I view just the opposite. I think you have less security. The bigger the company, the less security you have, because it's not necessarily based on your own capabilities or performance. It could be something that have nothing to do with you. So I always felt that your security is right here. That's the only security that you have as far as your career is concerned.
Couldn't agree more.
And so I said, "Dad, I can always go back to being a lawyer. I might have to rebuild the practice, but I can always go back to being a lawyer if this doesn't work out."
So here's a guy, he's 38 at the time, with 5 kids along the way, and you made a big change in your life. It's a huge step. And I know you, so I know I did it, but what did Erwin see in you? I mean, he dealt with a lot of people, but he chose you. Why? And don't be shy.
No, you would have to ask him that question. I think that he saw that I had a good legal mind, obviously, but that I was a deal maker. And he always would say that I had the ability to put deals together, and he would say, without pissing people off.
Right.
So that he really said, "Gee, this is an opportunity." And at the time, Earl was 72 years old, and he could have just decided not to do anything else. And he said, "Yeah, I really want to have one more run at this and see if we can really do more with our company." So he had the seniority. Like, I didn't have the white hair back then; he did. And like when we went together to try to raise capital, he was the elder statesman, and I was the young, energetic entrepreneur that was going to execute the vision. And so it just, I think we both would agree it could not have worked out any better.
You know, and I listen to what you say, and I'm thinking that a big part of your ability to grow and to realize whatever it is you want to do is cash, right? It's being
Yes.
able to borrow. So I think you brought that, as you just described, to the table. How important is financing and getting the right partners and the things that Erwin saw that you could do? How important is that? Has that been in your growth?
You know, it's funny. It used to be a lot more important because it was a lot more difficult to raise money. Today, there's so much money available for whatever the investment may be. There's a lot more money available. So it was a lot more challenging at the time. It was also challenging. It's easy for me now to raise money. I have no problem. I told you that we're partners with the California State Teacher Retirement System. We have a large programmatic relationship with them. Capital is almost like bricks. You know, it's just another thing that you have. But then, before we had the track record of these massive projects, it was a lot more challenging to raise capital, and there wasn't as much capital around. In 2001, we formed a joint venture with Prudential Life Insurance Company, now Prudential Global Investment Management. And they did provide capital for us, but they said, if you can put a deal together that fits in this little square here, we'll do this with you. And then that square got to be bigger. Once we formed, it got to be bigger and bigger. And then it was just, I would call and we would work out the deals together. But at the time, it was a much bigger challenge. Capital was a much bigger challenge than it is today.
And for any entrepreneur out there, that's the biggest single thing you're going to face, right? You had a story, but after you had a history, it was a lot easier.
Oh, yes.
But you
absolutely.
had to start.
Yes.
Right? So the first deal or two or three with, I guess it was Prudential or whatever you used to deal with back then. And again, it can be discouraging, right? It can be discouraging if you don't hit it the first time. But you had a plan, you had a vision, you still do, it's changed.
Right.
But initially you had a vision and you did what you needed to get it, and you got it.
We did. And Prudential was the first group that we talked to.
Right.
We went on the dog and pony show for quite a while trying to raise capital. But when we met Prudential, we felt that the match was perfect. I'm still very close friends with the guy that we did the original deal with 25 years ago, 24 years ago.
And you see you grow.
Yes.
Which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
You know, do you bring people in and help? When I say share success, I'm not talking about money, but you know, you recognize people for what they were in your history.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think that means a lot.
Absolutely. And Steve, like the fellow's name is Steve Vittorio, and I was with him last week that we were down in Florida. And it's funny, it was about 8 years ago, we were working on a project, and we had all these young, exciting entrepreneurs that worked with us at the table. And I looked at Steve and said, when did we become the old guys? It's like, how did that happen? It's like, we were the young whippersnappers. It just seemed like yesterday,
But
just like them.
You got to feel good about that, and you should. I mean, I don't think you want to ever rest on your laurels, but you know, I have a question here. It said that, and the question is, the answer is obvious. Do you think you lived up to Erwin's expectations?
Oh, I
I'm
think,
the answer to that, but I think
yes, I think the answer is that.
I think so, because he wanted a second push. He knew what he wanted. He needed somebody, a catalyst. You were that guy, and both of you are better for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Awesome.
when I came in, they hadn't developed. So this was '99. The last project they had done was 1984.
Oh my gosh.
So they were becoming a service company, kind of a stagnant service company. And he saw that, and he didn't want to be a stagnant service company.
Right.
When I say service, just do third-party leasing or third-party management
Right.
and so on. But without the platform, I don't think I could have executed what we did without his platform that he had already established over all those years. And without me, I don't think he could have done it. So it was really worked out well.
That is a great lesson to everybody. And you what Brian just said. You know, there's a platform that was there, and a lot of people say we don't have a partner, whatever. But without that partner, maybe you would never be where you are today. And again, that doesn't mean you wouldn't be successful, because I picture you as no matter what you do, you're going to do it well. And he saw that in you, which leads me to my next question. You have a big staff. How many people work for GG?
It's not that big. We have 50 people.
It's pretty big.
Yeah. Well,
but you've had a hand in hiring a lot of those people.
yeah. When I started, we had 7.
Right.
So we didn't grow like that. But when we grow like that, and our plan now with all these new divisions that we have is that in the next 5 years we'll have 125 people. So we think we're going to grow that much over the next 5 years. Where over the last 24 years, it's gone from 7 to 50.
Well, speaking of hiring people, what do you look for? Urban saw something to you. What do you look for when you hire somebody? Like, what are the key elements?
It depends on the position, but like for our senior executives, obviously hardworking, intelligent, an entrepreneurial spirit. You can, when you talk to people, you know whether they have an entrepreneurial spirit or not. It's almost an innate thing, and that for our business, that's when I say entrepreneurial spirit, that's a problem solver, because you're going to have problem after problem after problem. The key is to be able to solve those problems.
Got it.
And so that's really what I look at for a senior executive, whether they're in the construction division, the leasing division. We have a new president that I named as president of the company in July, Eric Walter, and he's been with us for 10 years. I've seen him grow, and it just the last 2 years, it all started to click for him.
Right.
It's almost like a light bulb went off. Says, I get this. He will help take this company to a new level. But he has that entrepreneurial spirit.
So entrepreneurial spirit is the key, which you had, which you still have. What are some of the things that you learned from Erwin? I know you brought a lot to the table, but if you had to say, these are the things. If I think about Erwin, who's enjoying his life right now, aside the opportunity they gave you, what kind of things do you learn from them?
It's interesting. I think one of the reasons why he chose me is that as a lawyer, I understood risk. And the way that Erwin really evaluated deals is, I'll take this much risk. I don't want to take that much risk. And he knew that I kind of appreciated that. So each deal that he did, he would only take a certain level of risk. And he said, I'll take body blows, but I can't take a knockout punch. Right. When you're being an entrepreneur, when you're taking risks and doing projects. And so I think that's one thing he said. He said, like, just don't get ahead of your skis. And so I would say that's probably the biggest thing.
So he tempered you a bit.
Yes, and like I say, if it weren't for Erwin, and if it weren't for my legal background, I'll have done one of two things differently. I'd either be significantly more successful and wealthy, or I'd file for bankruptcy a few times. Right. One of those two. So I think those things that that kind of to make sure that you take incremental steps and you have things under control, as opposed to a lot of developers. They're deal junkies.
Sensational.
If they're deal junkies and there's not a deal they don't like, and that's when you get in trouble. Right? You start buying deals that you don't have a plan to execute. Now, Erwin, I do tease him that he used to think the deal was over when we bought it. I'm like, we're just starting now. This deal's not over. But
this deal's going to throw some cash flow forever.
Yes.
Do it right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's awesome. You've got, I read some of your awards, and one of it was business and civic honors, right? Civic to me means community. It means, I think you have a foundation. Like, tell me how that works into your day. The things you care about other than growing your business.
Yeah. So I think my father kind of told me is that your first part of your life is to learn, the next part of your life is to earn, and the final part of your life is to serve, as far as a career is concerned. And so I'm now I'm still earning, but I'm trying to serve. And so, I'm on the board of LifeBridge Health, which I find, frankly, extremely rewarding. I learned it's real more educational for me than I think they do a lot more for me than I do for them. I try to do for them, but I do what I can to help. I'm on the board at University of Maryland College Park and University of Maryland Baltimore, because I went to College Park and the law school at University of Maryland Baltimore, and I just am so grateful for the university for the opportunities they gave me as a student athlete in those days. I think that play a significant part in my success, and I'm forever grateful. So I love doing that. And I've been on the Board of Hospice at Chesapeake, which is the Anne Arundel County, Prince George's County Board, for about 20 years. And I currently serve as the chairman of that board. It's a wonderful institution. It's a great cause. And again, it's very fulfilling for me to do that. So the other things I've also done are government related. I served on the Augustine Commission for Business Climate. Maryland put together this commission to try to improve business climate in the state. And I currently serve on the Interagency Commission on School Construction, which is basically allocates school funding throughout the state for all public schools. Which again, I learned more. It really just gives you a broad base of knowledge. Is one of the great things about this thing.
So you said it, and I love the way you put it. You learn, you earn, and you serve. But what you said a couple times is that you're learning now. Okay, during your service period.
Yes.
But that keeps you growing, right?
Yes,
and
absolutely.
And like to me, when I stop, I got to do something different, because if you're not learning, you're not growing, you're not changing. You're a busy man, okay? Not telling you anything you don't know. You have a big family. You had 6 kids. You have 6 and you have 4 grandkids. Mm-hmm. And during that earning stage, and even now, like, how do you balance work and life so that you still serve and you serve your family too, right?
Yep.
How do you do that?
Boy, it's a matter of priorities. For me, my greatest accomplishment is my family. And at the end of the day, you're not going, as far as your family's concerned, you're not going to be in your deathbed thinking, gee, I really wish I spent more time at work.
Right.
And so I've always had that in the forefront of my mind. And again, that was something that my father, even though he was a very successful businessman and rose through the ranks, he was always there for us. And I remember in Little League, growing up, if I'd get a hit, I'd look up there, he'd be there. So I wanted to make sure I did that for my kids. It was part of their life. And so our kids, whatever the events were, I always made a target. It didn't mean I wouldn't work later at night afterwards, because when you're running a business like this, it's a 24/7 up here.
You're always plugged in.
Yes, you're always plugged in, but I would always prioritize being there for the kids. I wanted them to see me on the sideline or in the audience or whatever it was to be there.
We'll share that, and I even said that about my dad, because he was always there, no matter where it was. And I said this many times about him, but and that's important, because you brought something up. You said when you're deathbed, you're not going to think about it. You wish you'd done more work.
Right.
So that is a huge factor, and I am so pleased to hear that you say, with all the things you've done, your greatest accomplishment is your family. And at the end of the day,
that's what it's all about.
That matter, right? Yeah. Before we move on, what concerns you? I mean, do you feel lay awake at night? Is there anything that concerns you about tomorrow and the next day? Issues that are going to impact your business?
Well, that's a great question, David. It changes. When you have, one is you have concerns for the greater good, and you have concerns about what's going on in the world. And then you also have concerns on how that impacts your business. So, but you always have to be prepared to know how these things are going to impact your business. So, macroeconomic things are that have the most impact that you can't control. I always tell people, like for us, interest rates make such a big difference in our business. And if I'm building a $100 million project, and I have a cost overrun of $5 million, that's really bad. That's really bad. But if I have a $100 million business, and let's say the cap rates for that business are for this retail center that we're building is currently 6%. And then if interest rates go up and the cap rate goes up to 8%, you say, well, that's 2%. That's not 2%, that's 33%. So the value changes. And so that's just part of the daily risk in real estate development, because when you're doing big projects in particular, you're going through economic cycles, and it's going to change, and your values are going to be up like this. So the thing about it is you can have no control over that at all.
Right.
And so it does I can figure out how to do the things I can control.
Right.
The things I can't control, you really can't figure out.
Yeah,
That's just
so
part of the risk.
there's two things right now that are impacting everyday life, and that's inflation. Okay, and then you have the war in Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what do you do about that? I mean, how do you deal with inflation? Let's start there.
There's not a lot you can do in dealing with inflation in our business. I think that what it is impacting us, like I said, it's hard to build anything right now because it's for two reasons. One is the costs keep going up and up, and the rents don't necessarily justify it. And two is, for example, we are building a flex industrial project in Carolinas right now, and we're moving along, and now we're moving on to another project, and I have to buy the steel and the roof 10 months in advance, which means that if I don't do it before I even own the property, then you're going to buy the property and sit there for 10 months.
That's supply chain.
Yeah, so it's a supply chain issue. And so we're taking, in the past, I would not have taken that kind of risk.
Right.
But we are taking those risks now, just thinking that, it's, again, if it's a body blow risk, it's not a knockout risk.
Yeah.
So that's how it's.
Interesting you said that because I consult in construction business, obviously, and steel, although the pricing started to come down, the lead times are crazy.
Yeah, we've got steel and roofing.
Yeah.
Roofing materials.
It's unbelievable. What about the war in Ukraine? Does that have an impact? Could it have an impact on you?
You mean in terms of the business? I mean, that gives me great concerns about the entire world.
Sure
Obviously,
does.
there's certainly, what the Russian government is doing is awful, and China and all the implications of that. I hope that the West wins.
Not to mention nuclear
Yes,
issues, right?
no, absolutely. In terms of our business, again, I think that's going to prolong inflation. Certainly, if you can't, because oil and gas prices, it drives inflation across the board. It affects everything. So energy price affects everything. It's going to affect the price of steel. It's going to affect the price of concrete. It's going to affect everything. And so, will that impact us? Yeah, I think it will.
Well, we're going to take another short break, and when we get back, we're going to take a peek into the future of GG Commercial and Brian himself. So we'll see you in a minute. And welcome back to Commercial Construction Elevate the Industry. I'm here with Brian Gibbons. And Brian, you have a big family. We talked about work-life balance, but what I didn't ask you before was you're one of 8.
Yes.
And off camera, I asked you, about the influence of your father, and I think you brought that forward in some of the dialogue. But you said your brothers had a big impact on you.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Like I said, I'm one of 8. I'm 7th of 8. So I was kind of behind everybody, and I really got to see my older brothers and sisters, as they started their careers and the way they handled things. And it really was inspirational to me. And I think my father was able to inspire all of us, and it was not in a aggressive way. It was in an example way.
Right.
Just showing you what hard work is. He and my mother always prioritized her children. She to this day would do anything for her children to make sure they got to school, whatever they needed for school, whatever they needed for sporting events or whatever it may be. That was her priority. But my father was really set the example, and my brothers and sister obviously followed it. And so I saw them having success. My brother, Mike, my oldest brother, Mike, 25 restaurants, just sold out most recently. And I saw his success. My brother, Todd, just announced his retirement as the CEO of the bank in New York, 7th largest bank in the United States. We're so proud of him. And the other thing about my brothers, not only did they serve as inspiration, and they also were proud to be part of the family,
Right.
and continue to be proud of part of the family, and cheer on each other's dreams and successes.
So they must see little Brian as a success.
Well, I'm the biggest in the family. I'm the tallest in the family.
Yeah.
So
You're still little Brian. That's
But all of my brothers have they're all been driven. And, I attribute that to my mother and father.
So,
And sister. I keep saying brothers because I have 5 brothers.
it's just correct.
Two sisters.
You know, I think sometimes we undervalue the importance of role models, and role models, you hear that so much, mentors, but people who set the right, you use the word example, right? That is what your dad did.
Right.
And you know, for everybody that's listening out there, you not only have people that you look up to, that you can learn from, right? And I'm talking to one of them right now, but there are people that are looking up to you every day. So you have to make sure that you're setting the right example too, because I mean that's something that passes on. Whether it's family, in your case it was,
Right.
and some people aren't as fortunate to have 7 siblings,
Right.
and a father who cared and a mother who loved unconditionally. But you can have that same impact on others, so don't forget that. What do you see as Greenberg Gibbons looking like in 5 years?
Again, that's Greenberg Gibbons 3.0. That's going to be mainly executed. I see myself in CEO, chairman position over that 5-year period. That's going to be executed by our executive team, led by Eric Walter, who, like I said, is our president. Driven, smart, good vision for the future. And I see us really growing, like we said, we're going to continue with this flex industrial, we're going to continue with our retail-driven mixed-use projects. We're going to continue now with multifamily development and construction, and we're going to continue raising this private equity fund. So we really have 4 different components of the business right now. When we really only had 1 5 years ago.
So you're just going to grow kind of what you have in 3.0.
Yes.
Right,
Yes.
and you feel like you have the right staff to do it.
I think we have the right people in place,
So,
the right executives.
barring any crazy issues with interest rates or anything else, I mean, really, you could probably do nothing and be okay for a time, right? If you had to be. As you say, you take the gut punch, but not the knockout punch, right?
Right.
I don't see that happening. If I were listening, I would say this guy Brian is blessed in so many ways, and that things came easy to you. I don't know if they did or not. I mean, but can you give us an example of things that maybe were struggling for you, that were difficult times that you maybe thought about doing something different? Were there ever those times?
Well, as a kid, I was not a great student in school. I was okay. I was capable, but I never really applied myself when I was even through high school. And it really, as I got to college, I was an athlete. I played tennis in college. And when I went to university, I started at University of Houston. All my teammates turned pro 1 year, and then I was like, I'm not ready to turn pro. And so that's what that's what really the example of my brothers, how they worked hard. I said I can do that too, and I applied myself, and then I started really excelling in school. So that was a challenge for me. I was also kind of, my mom always said I was hyperactive. I don't know any kids that aren't hyperactive
Right.
in this world today. But I was like your poster child back in those days of being hyperactive. So that was an impediment. Like in the business itself, I wish I would have, I wish I would have pulled the trigger on some of the things that we're now doing earlier. The mixed-use town center projects that we have done, we brought in residential developers or and so on. It makes it much more challenging to execute. And I had talked about it, but I was just too darn busy getting things done to really bring someone in to execute that. Now that I have some senior execs that are capable of running a lot of this stuff, and I have a partner that has a great vision. I think I told David Williams, who was the founder of Merkle, is also a partner in Greenberg Gibbons now, and has really brought a whole new skill set that I don't really have. He is a much bigger vision, macro plan type of guy, and he has helped put these things in place. And again, between the executive staff and him, that's really what helped set Greenberg Gibbons 3.0. But I really wish I would have done it earlier. And in retrospect, it would have been a lot better off if I did. But we are where we are.
Yeah, and I think you learn from history, but you don't lament on it, right?
Right.
And you talked about a partner. You got a partner who added value because he was different kind of thinker than you.
Yes.
And we say in other podcasts that when you're starting a business or you want to grow your business, do whatever you want to do, it probably doesn't make sense to bring in somebody who's like your clone.
Right.
You know, and it may sound elementary, but people do it. People bring in other people just for money. You don't need to do that. You can borrow money because it costs so much to get people out of it if they're not really actively engaged in growing the business. You know, I ask everybody that I interview to define success. Like, what does success mean to you, Brian Gibbons?
I think that for our business success, that I'd like to leave a legacy of these great projects, and that we came in, and because if you look at what we do, and I always say this, a lot of developers get a bad reputation because they're secretive about what they're doing, they're not sharing things. When we are going to do one of these major projects, I proactively make sure that we engage the community, because at the end of the day, it's the community's project.
It is.
And so when I think about our success, I want it obviously to be successful for all stakeholders. The stakeholders are us, our employees, our investors, the communities, and the local officials that get behind you and support a project like we have at the Annapolis Town Center or Foundry Road or others. And I do not want to do a project that the community doesn't want. I want to engage them and create something that they do want. When I say the community, there's always going to be someone that doesn't want something.
Or wants something
Or
for it.
Yes, exactly. Or there could be a competitive developer that doesn't want it.
Right.
But when I say the community, I mean the real community that are actively engaged in what's happening in their community.
You know, I think I read that you just decided not to, or maybe it's the last few months, decided not to propose developing on the golf course at the University of Maryland.
Yes.
And it was for those reasons, right?
It was for those reasons. It didn't feel right. It was. It's hard sometimes. That I think, you know, I had a vision where we could bring 95 directly into the university through the golf course. That the golf course had minimal use, and that we could create what I was calling Terrapin Parkway, to create this visual that I thought would change the perspective of the university.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a lot of support amongst
including the president
and others, including like the president of the Senate at the time and so on. But it got to be such a political thing, and that often happens when you're talking about the state university and state land and so on, that I just didn't think it was going to be worth it to fight the battle, because I didn't feel that we were going to get enough support for it.
Right. But I think that's indicative. So you walk the talk, right? I mean, that's what you live by. And you answered one of my questions with what your legacy is. You just described it, you know. And from what I glean from that, it's where everybody, from the community to the politicians to you, to your staff, win.
Right.
And I think you've demonstrated that over and over and over again. I can't thank you enough for taking time to share your story with us. It's been great for me. I know it's been great for our listeners. And again, I said it earlier, and I don't say this often, and I'm impressed, and I hate to use that word, but I'm impressed with what you've done in business. But I even more respect with how grounded you stayed and how tight you are with your family. I think that's fantastic. So, Brian, thanks again for sharing, and we wish you the best.
Thank you.
So, again, thank Brian Gibbons for joining us today, and until next week, stay safe and stay tuned. So, follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Elevate Industry. Check out my YouTube channel at Commercial Construction, Elevate the Industry. Visit my website, adicorp.com, ADICORP.com. Go to LinkedIn, search for David Procida, hit connect, and follow me. Please rate, review, and comment on this episode, and I look forward to seeing you next week.